Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time zone it is, whether you're in the world, it is your Lore Saviour. And today we're talking about World of Darkness books, specifically new ones, or rather 3 new ones and technically one old one that's getting a reprint, which would be exciting if I was at all optimistic for its release. Now, if you don't know why I'm waffling about this, or the context of this, because context is always key. Today, well, this month rather, is October, and it's actually the 7th of October 2025 in the year of our Lord Talos as I'm recording this. And World of Darkness, each October has their Month of Darkness, where they slash pretty much every single World of Darkness product on Drive4RPG up to 40%, so go and use the affiliate code in the description below to purchase a whole variety of PDFs and the like from Drive4RPG. But also, World of Darkness tend to announce something World of Darkness related on every single day of October. And a couple of days ago, which would have been the 5th, perhaps even the 4th, might have even been a bit earlier, I don't fucking know, I heard about it 2 days ago, there was a group of 4 books that were announced that were going to be released. One of which was a Way of the Apocalypse 5th edition adventure sort of thing, which I didn't care for, that's not what we're talking about. One of which was a Hunter the Reckoning 5th edition one, which honestly I forget about every single time Hunter's ever brought up in conversation, and we're not talking about that either. We're actually talking about these 2 books called Live from the Succubus Club and Chronicles of the Black Labyrinth, or From the Black Labyrinth, I can't remember the exact wording of which. We're going to start with the Black Labyrinth one because I think that's going to be the one that's going to raise a few eyebrows if you've been with the World of Darkness beyond the first few years of World of Darkness and you're familiar with things outside of 5th edition. Chronicles of / From the Black Labyrinth is, to describe it poorly, is essentially a big old chronicle book, and I say chronicle as in written stories rather than playable scenarios regarding the Black Spiral Dancers. If you want to look at this from a poor Vampire the Masquerade angle, you could say that this is the equivalent of the Book of Nod for the Black Spiral Dancers. It's not a very good comparison, but just so we're all on the same sort of page of what to expect with the written stuff. Now, why do I find this particularly odd? Well, the first thing is that it's extraordinarily problematic in parts. Fitting for the Black Spiral Dancers of old, because it's filled with all sorts of things like sexual assault, rape, abuse, you know, all those sort of things that a lot of people may refer to as edgy. And also we are going to be using some older vocabulary and language that's associated with certain clans that got a revisit for the 5th edition, so I suppose if they're going to be reprinting that, they may just change some of the names in that, I suppose. But I also find this particularly odd, one because of its darker subject matters, which generally doesn't get much of a mention in 5th edition stuff, or better and for worse. I've talked about in the past why I think this is inherently a bad thing, because, you know, censorship and not actually wanting to be a fucking horror game. But it just feels like we're leaning in the direction a little bit of the Black Spiral Dancers not being the absolute monstrosities that they are. That they're really more sympathetic, worm-tainted losers, a sort of player adjacent. And I say this because you've got a lore sheet for 5th edition that allows you to pull back a Black Spiral Dancer from the brink, which makes people wonder, and myself wonder, that if some guru have this capability, you know, to cleanse the literal worm away from the guru, why isn't this taught to every guru, you know? It's a bit of weird storytelling. Another weird thing about this is that one of the more recent 5th edition source books, Wormtide, has worm-tainted gifts, and it assigns the different worm urges to star signs, which sort of puts a weird spin on that element of spirituality. And also you can't bring back those who've been succumbed by Hawk's Glog, which is basically werewolf fascism, and you can't do that sort of thing with the Fenrir, or the Cult of Fenris. Still fucking hate that name. It's a bit weird, and I think we're sort of leaning towards the Black Spiral Dancers eventually being playable, which, if you've been around with Way of the Apocalypse any amount of time, you'll know that everything I have just said is fucking bizarre. And it's also weird that Black Spiral Dancers, as I said, are sort of player adjacent, but we draw the line at the start for Vampire the Masquerade. I will forever be salty about this, and some would argue this is where my downfall truly began, but whatever, I guess. So that's what I feel about Chronicles of Black Labyrinth. I don't really care all that much for it because you can get the original from Drive4RPG, and from my brief investigation, Original print copies are not too hard to find on eBay. And if you've got one already, great, you don't need to purchase that book again. And I suspect it's going to be like $50-ish, which is what they did with the fucking Revelations of the Dark Mother. Yeah, have a look at that on screen, I guess. Because again, I don't know, and I'm just basing this solely on the pre-order price of the next book that we're going to be talking about, Live from the Succubus Club, which I have to say, as much as I love Raquel Cornell's artwork, because they did the cover art for this one, this isn't the first thing that comes to mind when I think of the Succubus Club. This looks a bit odd, almost inappropriate, dare I say. If I just be a little crass for a moment, I get that the picture's supposed to be like a vampire club goer off in his fucking rocker on whatever sort of substance they've been snorting off a toilet seat. But to me, that has more the look of somebody who's had the best fucking head of their life, and it's the first time that they've received it too. But that's just the weird places that we go on Lore by Night, so perhaps take that description with a pinch of salt. But my partner strongly disagrees with that description, so, you know, go wherever your head fancies, I suppose. Now, the thing I have with this book is that it's not out yet, obviously. It's a pre-order. I'm going to put up on screen all the bits and pieces that it includes, but if you're not prepared to look at the screen or can't for whatever reason, it's a collection of modules, scenarios across Europe of all places. There's some powers, there's some merits, there's some flaws, and other little tidbits like that, and there's also information regarding the Vorman twins and Victor Temple of LA by Night and LA Bloodlines respectively, because it's all entertainment focused. It's the source book of how to be entertainment superstars and rockers and the like, and I just find that a little unusual. Not because of the Victor Temple and Vorman twin stuff. I feel that's more of a fucking clout thing, particularly with the Vorman twins. You know, Bloodlines is just around the corner and they want people to order it. Like, oh, the Vorman twins, Bloodlines, we've got that little nostalgia thing, go and buy it, it's pretty please. Victor Temple, you know, reminding people that LA by Night was once a mega powerhouse within the actual play scene, and it's just sort of become a wet fart because it's just nothing's happened with it since, and New York by Night is sort of ceased to exist, I suppose. But who knows what will happen in the near future regarding the third and presumably final actual play series. No, but the reason why I find this book particularly unusual in premise, because again, I have not read it, so I can't properly judge it, one might argue, but based on its cover and description, which is how we judge all books, whether it's worth our attention or not, I'm not sure who this is for, because I've run many a World of Darkness and Vampire games. I've run a lot of TTRPGs, but of course I've run plenty of Vampire. And there's always at least one person in the group who's like a club owner or a singer or some rock or some sort of person within the entertainment/music scene. And they just do it. It's not like a terribly involved concept for characters to get into. It's not too hard to do research about that one. It's not too hard to imagine yourself in an idyllic place where you are at the top of your game, or wanting to get to the top of your game and managing a club or owning part of the Succubus Club or a pop-up one, because there is a 5th edition lore sheet that allows you to have like a pop-up Succubus Club, but now we're getting a whole source book that talks a lot more about that. So I don't know, it just feels a bit odd. Like, do we need an entire source book on this sort of thing? Do we really need more fucking powers that are so specifically themed that used outside of these specific contexts? It's just going to look a bit odd. Also, there is already an existing Succubus Club sourcebook. I reviewed it on the channel. It's one of the more useful books in my games whenever I'm doing anything in Chicago. I had that book to hand because it just has so much information about the history and the lore regarding the Succubus Club. Now, will this book include that information? Quite possibly. Maybe they'll just outright ignore it. I don't know, but it's a much cheaper alternative, and you can make the adjustments that you need to update it for your games, or not, in the case of The Sacrifice from Chicago by Night, which does very little to reinvent it, other than from memory it completely shuts off most of the Labyrinth and just makes a room a fucking storage bin. So it really doesn't do that much officially, so I don't know what else they could add to it, unless they do what they did with the actual Succubus Club of many years gone by, and present maps and description and all this other little bit of world building and lore, which historically Renegade and World of Darkness in the 5th edition setting have been afraid to do, but we're seeing a bit more of that now with some of the more recent books, but they are just consistently problematic. Now, the mentioning of a music-centric sourcebook on entertainment and the like might get some of the creative brain juices for some of you going, because it would be a wonderful opportunity to reintroduce a specific bloodline known as the Daughters of Cacophony, which are vocal-based, and I actually did a lore dive on them many moons ago, which you can go and listen at your own leisure. And I feel particularly proud of that episode because I'm one of the few people, if not the only person on YouTube, I can't speak for certain now, but there was a time where I was like the only one who covered the Daughters of Cacophony in all their detail, and quite frankly, I would not be surprised if I am still the only one who managed to do this. But, you know, wanking my ego aside, a book like this would have been a wonderful opportunity to introduce that singing-based bloodline. I say would have, as in speaking of the past tense, because they have already been introduced into the 5th edition setting via a very crappy lore sheet, which basically boils down to you can be a daughters or son of Discord or Cacophony if you want to, because you're a special snowflake. They are a rumour, they are myth, but that may or may not exist. But if you want to call yourself one, you absolutely can. Here's your gold sticker, with powers that pay the scarcest of homages to the bloodline, and it's sort of received as well as a wet fart in the face as you're in the middle of the night sleeping, because people heavily requested the bloodline and all we got was a poorly written lore sheet. And to rub salt into the wound, a year or so later, the V5 Player's Guide would introduce Melpomene as a presence power amalgam thing. So you're not going to get a full fucking clan bloodline write-up. And I've had to point this out to a few people, and people have either not known about the lore sheet or they've not known about the power. So brilliantly communicated, I guess, World of Darkness, you know? And then again, these things tend to be advertised for those who are perpetually online, because there's still some people to this day who were a bit surprised that Bloodlines 2 was a thing, that Bloodlines 2 wasn't cancelled, etc. and so forth, you know? So anyway, point is that you're not getting the Daughters of Cacophony, and if those two fucking shitty introductions didn't exist already, then that would have been a great place to include this. So, to me, at least, from my perspective, I'm just a bit puzzled who this book is for. Like, what purpose does it serve beyond a few adventures? And let's be honest, most vampire players are going to be purchasing it with the fucking powers, because that's all the lore and world building that they need, really, which is a shame, because the Succubus Club is such an important thing to the world building of Vampire the Masquerade and Chicago and the legacy of all of that. Yeah, as I said, I haven't read it yet because it doesn't really exist to the public yet, but it just seems a fucking weird thing to me for it to exist. Not as weird as Chronicles of the Black Labyrinth, admittedly, but it's... yeah. But that's where we are with things at the moment on Lore by Night, where I feel that we are really having to scrape the fucking barrel for content to give to people. Because I don't think this is a worthwhile book for people to get. Like, as I said, there's a much cheaper book you could be using already. And, as I said at the beginning of this, or towards the beginning, there's always at least one person in a vampire group that owns a club, runs a club, a bouncer for a club, a singer, performer. Like, I don't think this is going to be the most essential book to a Vampire the Masquerade's players' repertoires, I suppose. But I suppose in that sense, maybe other people in Renegade / World of Darkness have seen this, and it just seems like logical sense to put this sort of thing out, I suppose. There you go, there's a fucking pass for you. Chronicles of the Black Labyrinth, I suppose, is a cool theme being reprinted, I suppose, but I'm not a huge fan of changing the material, which they probably will do in some respect, because that's what they tend to do with these things anyway. So yeah, what are your thoughts and opinions about that? I would love to hear the good, the bad, and the downright ugly from your perspective down in the comments below. As I've mentioned already, go and use the affiliate code to purchase World of Darkness related things this month, or Month of Darkness, or World of... I can't remember the fucking naming scheme, but I said it already. Do that for some discounted prices. Use the affiliate code and send some of that money my way to help to provide awesome content like this and more, which is great for you because you get shit, I get shit, and you get additional shit for free, which is absolutely amazing shit. It's made the fucking birds excite, at least. But if you want to get something else that's not World of Darkness related, you can use the affiliate code and it'll do the same thing all the same, which is great. But I can understand even with those discounts that may be difficult for you, and they are PDF only, which is like a turn off for some people, which I totally understand. But on the money side of things, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it if you can't do that. It's just that you can do that, that would be absolutely goated. But if you can't, that's also goated. So put yourself first financially. But what you should definitely do regardless is give the video a little cheeky little thumbs up, subscribe to the Lore by Night channel, and share this video with any and everyone who loves what I do. And I'll see you on the next upload, whatever that may well be for you. And until next time, farewell.